Kathy?
Pretty good. Yeah.
The microphones are live.
Spot on the nose, just healed up. I'm hanging in there. Although when you go, it's hard to keep up with.
She's the one who assesses.
Take that for a while.
I get that. I mean, I'm happy for them on the Sabbath.
That's what she felt like from that photo.
Welcome, everyone. We want to call the first meeting of the 1920 school year to order. And if you will, please stand, and our veteran on the board, Dr. Fitzhill, is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you'll notice on the screen, there is, if you want to access the agenda on your electronic devices, then you may do so, or there's one, you can pick up one outside at the reception desk. Before we start our meeting, I want to introduce you. A lot of times people don't really know who their state board members are, or that there is two from each of the 4 congressional districts and 1 at-large member. From the 4th congressional district, we have Rhett Williamson, who's from El Dorado. He's a businessman, economic developer, father, and grandfather. And we have Weta Newton over here, who's from Poen. She's an educator, a former teacher of the year, and a mother and grandmother. From the 3rd congressional district, we have Susan Chambers here from Bentonville. She's a businesswoman, serves on several boards, and is a mother and grandmother. And Kathy McFetridge from Springdale. She's a business owner and a former local school board member. She's also a mother and a grandmother. From the 2nd congressional district, we have Fitzhill, who is a coach, a promoter, an on-air personality, a father, and a brand new grandfather. And Sharice Dean from Little Rock. She's the vice chair for the 1920 school year. She's a former homeschool teacher, a governmental affair and project coordinator, and she is a mother of 4. Our newest board member, who won't start until August, it couldn't be with us today. His name is Chad Pickren, and he's from Bryant. He's an attorney, and he is the father of 5, so he's one-upped you. And then from the 1st congressional district, we have Sarah Moore. She's from Stuttgart. She's an educator, an education policy advocate, and the mother of 2 preschoolers. And I'm Diane Zook. I'm from Melbourne, and I'll be serving as your chair this year. I'm an educator and a court-appointed special advocate and a grandmother, and I'll serve as the chair, like I said, this year. We also have 2 non-voting members, the current teacher of the year, who is representing Arkansas in Europe on a trip. She was chosen by CCSSO, and so that's quite an honor, and we're pleased for her. And her name is Stacy McAdoo. She's on leave from Central High School in Little Rock, and she's also a mother. And then we have Johnny Key, the Secretary of Education, and he is a father. No grandfather here. The rest of our team are Sharon Hill, who's our court reporter, Tiffany Donovan, who keeps our minutes and does phone duty, and Dan Davis, who handles our audio-visual. And behind the scenes, we have Gina Wendell, who is Chief of Staff, and Adrian Williams, who's the Executive Administrative Assistant to the Secretary of Education, as well as all the women and men at ADE, some of whom are seated in the back and at the tables along the back and on the sides. As we get started, I want to remind you to put your mouth, and people have to remind me too, close to this, because sometimes, even though it can be heard on live stream, it's hard for the audience to hear us. And for those of you who may come to the podium, also, if you'll get close to the microphone, because we are being live streamed. We also have a public comment section, and if you're here and wish to do public comment, you'll need to sign up ahead of time so that we won't overlook you. Anything else? Okay, here we go. We don't have any changes to the agenda that I'm aware of. Does anyone? Okay, okay. Okay, the B, 5B, which is on the action agenda, has been pulled. And 6, B, C, and D, those parent choice have been resolved. Anything else? We're good? Okay. Now, to the consent agenda, does anyone have anything that they want pulled or to either question or have discussion about? I'll start over here with Ms. Newton.
I have questions on 12 and 15, please.
12 and 15. Okay, both of those are Ms. McLaughlin, so if you'll be ready when the time comes. Dr. Hill, Ms. Chambers, Ms. Dean, Ms. McPetridge.
Yes, ma'am. I have a question on number 6.
Under 10. Oh, number 6, okay,
Item
sorry.
6, I'm sorry.
No problem.
And then, is it number, yes, under number 10, I'd like us to look at number 1,
Okay,
number 3, number 4, number 28, 31, 34, and I believe that's all.
okay. Mr. Williamson? Dr. Moore? Commissioner?
Yeah, so, thank you, Madam Chair. On item 10, what the Learning Services team has asked that if there are any questions on any of those, that we go ahead and just pull those off until next month, and then they can bring back details. So, and then and they'll follow up with the members that have questions on them and see what details you need to know, and then report back next month.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and then she can get with them about any questions separate from the meeting, or does she need to tell them while we're here at the meeting?
We can get with her separate. I just want to make sure
Yeah,
I have the
yeah.
right numbers.
Okay,
I think number 1, 3, 4, 28, 31, 34,
That's it.
that's it.
Thank you.
okay, a little housekeeping there. Okay, and let's go in order, even though they were in different sequence. Is that okay with you, Ms. Newton?
Yes.
Okay, number 6, Ms. McPetridge?
I just have a little concern, and I noticed on another item that we were looking at today that I would just suggest that the educator provide a letter from a licensed mental health provider stating that she is fit to return to the classroom. I just feel like that would be appropriate in this case.
Mr. James, can you respond to that?
Eric James, PLSB. Can you repeat your question? It was a little hard to hear. Or statement.
We're looking at item number 6.
Yes.
And I just feel like it would be appropriate if this educator would provide us a letter from a licensed mental health provider stating that she is fit to return to the classroom.
Okay. What we can do, I will take that back and to the subcommittee so they can review that. From the information you have, this person proactively inserted herself in a program. I have to be careful what I say on the mic, of course.
Exactly, right.
She has been clean from the activity that's in your packet right there, but I can take that back and pose that to the subcommittee if you so choose.
I think that would be good, thank you.
Okay.
And you want to stay there because Ms. Newton has questions too. No? Yes.
It's not on.
Oh, no, Ms. McLaughlin, sorry. Thank you, Mr. James.
Do you have anybody from Dover or Greenbrier that could answer questions this morning?
They are both on the phone, yes.
Is someone from Dover on the line? What about Greenbrier?
Yes, Greenbrier's on the line.
Okay. My question for you is I noticed that you had been doing the hub, and we've had several schools that have in recent weeks petitioned to get a waiver to join the hub from different areas of the state. But I noticed that you were thinking about starting your own ALE. Could you tell me why that you're thinking about doing your own local?
Yes, we have applied for the alternative learning environment, applied for that program. We do have some students that we do feel we can provide a very similar service to them here on our actual campus. For example, we had 2 students last year who are in more of a homeless situation, and they're going into their senior year, and they do need to work. And we feel like we are building capacity to actually do that on our campus right now. And then we have some other ones, of course, the different financial situations that are not related necessarily to a homeless situation, but just other family situations as well. And we have counseling support to be able to add the mental health services there. So we're just looking forward to the possibility to let those students, stay on their home campus, but in that alternative learning environment. And another goal is to also get these students in these situations more connected to our community. We have some strong community partners already, and we would like to embed some community service within that, just to connect them to some of our local nonprofits and other organizations for them to better understand what's really going on in the broader scope of Greenbrier, and then also at the same time learn what their possibilities are after graduation. So with the goal that we help them graduate on time, but then let them have a plan for leaving us to know whether that's employment, immediate employment, or other training after high school.
That sounds wonderful, and I know it's going to be a great benefit for your students. Is there, if you weigh the pros and cons of having the ALE off-site, would you think which I know that you're wanting to go on-site, would you have any recommendations for other school districts around the state along those lines?
Recommendations at this point. Now, I do feel like we will still access the resources through Crossroads for students who may have more significant social or behavioral concerns, if that makes sense, as compared to those who may not have those challenges at this point, that may just be facing more life challenges. So we will still access Crossroads for that type of service. And again, I think our viewpoint is we feel like we can accommodate and support these students for on-time graduation, but connect them to our local community, so they very well may likely end up living anyways, and let them know what's there. So again, we're in the first steps of it and have just applied. We're actually setting up the physical space of our new ALE classroom this week. and have been working with our student intervention team at the high school to identify the possible students that we'll sit down with them and their parents, if the parents are available, of course, and make a success plan of offering this service to them and moving in that direction. Again, we are in the first steps, but we're excited about the possibility.
Right, and I hope that you will take your steps and maybe share it with others around the state. And we all know that those connections that students can make at the local level are vital to their future success. So I hope you will share what you're doing.
Thank you. And we are calling this a focused classroom. We're not we're not necessarily calling it the ALE classroom. It's the focused classroom where the idea is focused on the individual student life and what's going on with them and making that individualized plan for them that is an alternate plan, because the traditional classroom, is not necessarily providing what could help them right now.
Student-focused learning. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes. You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Is there someone from Dover on the line?
Yes,
Who am I speaking with?
this is Josh. I've got Josh Daniels here, superintendent, as well as David Gaston, our high school assistant principal.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. I noticed as I read your progress report, you said that with implementation that you had some difficulties of implementing the Hub ALE program. Could you describe those to me a little bit more?
Well, I believe the program's been very successful as far as our students. We're seeing kids that may not have been able to graduate with us that have been able to graduate. I think where some of our trouble or issues have occurred is just in perception. We're new into this program, just completed our second year, and we're still trying to build that capacity within our teaching staff to know, and with our administrators, which kids would be benefiting the most from our Hub program. So it's kind of learning that, and I feel like we've got a better grasp on that after our second year that we can take and improve on moving forward.
Okay. If you would be willing, I would really like to, I know this has been a learning process for you, and we've got some districts that are coming in new to the Hub program. If you would be able to share, maybe with some of the leaders at the Hub, and they could get it out to the new districts, some of the challenges that you faced and how you dealt with those, and maybe some of the learning process, so maybe those districts wouldn't make some of the same mistakes, or not mistakes, but face some of the same challenges that you were facing when you were implementing this. Sure.
I think if have that would be just be an important part for them as well. That would help them, and we'd be glad to share anything that they'd like to take.
I would really appreciate that if you could maybe make those contacts and do some sharing. And good luck with your program this year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Moved by Ms. McFetrich, second by Ms. Chambers. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passed. Okay, we're going to move now to our action agenda. Mr. Dugan, number 1.
Good morning. Taylor Dugan, attorney for the Division of Elementary and Secondary Education, Legal Services. Board members, what you have in front of you as the first agenda item is a license revocation of Mr. Timothy Redden. I've put together a packet. Ms. Freed, if you would mind sounding the halls to see if Mr. Redden is available. And since Mr. Redden is not here, may I proceed, Madam Chair?
Please do.
So what I have in front of the board today are a number of exhibits, 4 exhibits. The first exhibit is the educator's license, which is marked as AD Exhibit 1 to show that he does have an existing license, that we did send him notice on March 22nd, 2019, that he did have these charges. I attach as AD Exhibit 3 is that he was found guilty and pled guilty of attempted coercion and enticement of a minor to engage in criminal sexual activity which would be a disqualifying offense under 67410, and that we did send him notice of this hearing here today. And so, since he's not here, since we did provide him with proper notice, I would ask that this board revoke Mr. Redden's license.
Are there any questions? Do you have a motion?
Move revocation.
Moved by Ms. Newton, seconded by
Second.
Ms. McFettridge. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And what we do have, I believe, on the second agenda item for the action is the State Board review of Mr. Jacob Conrad de la Paz. I know Ms. Reno is going to go through the rules, so would you like to do that first, Ms. Reno?
Yes, would you come to the podium, Ms. Farino? Remind us so we
Thank you,
did
Madam
everything
Chair.
correctly.
Lori Freno, Division of Elementary and Secondary Education. This is an appeal of an Ethics Hearing Subcommittee's recommendation that Mr. Jacob de la Paz, his educator license, be suspended for a period of 5 years and that he be fined $500. On a procedural note, you might remember that in January of this year, this board granted Mr. de la Paz's request to file his appeal beyond the time set forth in the rules, and this board approved that, and that's fine, but now everything has been completely briefed and everything is ready for this hearing today. If I may go over the procedures for this hearing.
Please do.
First, Mr. de la Paz will make a statement to the State Board for up to 10 minutes, of course, Mr. de la Paz or his counsel, for up to 10 minutes, and then Mr. Dugan will make a statement to this board on behalf of the PLSB for up to 10 minutes as well. At any time, this board may ask questions of the educator, the investigators, or their counsel. If anyone is asked a question who is not an attorney, they do need to be sworn in. That is the procedure for the hearing. May I go over, kind of give you a preview of what you all will be deciding at the end of the hearing?
Please. She'll go over it now, and then if we have questions, she can tell us again.
Great, thank you, Ms. Zook. The first thing that you're going to need to do is make a finding of fact. In other words, you'll need to determine whether you agree with the evidentiary hearing panel's factual underpinning with regards to this case. Second, if you agree with the facts as determined by the Ethics Hearing Subcommittee, you will need to make a determination based upon those facts, whether Mr. de la Paz violated Standard 1, Standard 2, or both of the Code of Ethics. And third, if you do determine that there was a violation of Standard 1, Standard 2, or both, then you will need to decide whether you agree with the sanction that was imposed by the subcommittee, which again was 5 years suspension and $500 fine, or whether you would want to modify the sanction. And probably it would be best and cleanest if you do this through 3 motions. One motion would be the findings of fact, one would be the conclusions of law, and one would be for the sanction.
Okay.
And if there are any no questions from the board?
Yeah,
Yes.
would you clarify that even though this happened a couple of years ago, he has been teaching, but once this decision is made by this board, that will go on his record?
Once a decision is made by this board, it would be a final decision, yes. I mean, that's something he could appeal to the circuit court.
Right. Thank you. Any questions of Ms. Farino? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And the educator starts first, yes.
That is correct.
Okay, would everyone who will be giving testimony, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? You may be seated and proceed.
Ladies Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Joe Giglio from Lafayette, Louisiana. I'm Mr. De La Paz's counsel. Mr. De La Paz, at the end of my presentation, would like to give a statement that we've timed at 2 minutes, and if the chair and the board would allow it, I would like to be given a notice at, say, 7 minutes, if the board would allow Mr. De La Paz time for his 2-minute statement.
Yes, I'm saying yes.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. The student in this case, while she was a junior at Cabot High School, developed a crush on her young millennial track coach, Jacob De La Paz, whom you've met, who started working at Cabot High School right out of college at age 24. Through text messages, it was made clear that the student had an attraction for Mr. De La Paz. It became apparent that the attraction was mutual, but it also became apparent that the coach, Coach De La Paz, made it very clear that any potential relationship must wait until the student's graduation. The student lived at home with her father and stepmother. The coach lived at home with his parents. The student and the coach were never alone together at any time. There was no inappropriate touching, no inappropriate contact whatsoever, no kissing, nothing physical, no inappropriate pictures, nothing like that. The coach did, on a volunteer basis, tutor the young student in math, and she excelled. The coach coached the student in track, and she became a star, a state champion. The coach and his student met on a church mission trip, and the student herself testified that she excelled in track. She became a state champion, and with Coach De La Paz's volunteer help, she performed very well in math. The student admitted that at a certain point, toward the end of her junior year, May of her junior year, the student testified that she developed a crush on Coach De La Paz. In questioning, I asked the student, did you sometimes confide in Coach De La Paz that you were comparing yourself to other students? And this is because she seemed in the texts to be asking Coach De La Paz for reassurance. And so I asked, were you comparing yourself to others? She said yes. And did he reassure you that you were as competitive, as good, or better than the others that you were worried about? And she said yes. In one of the texts, you stated, I loved you with all my heart, DLP. DLP was her nickname for Coach De La Paz, DLP. Did you mean that? She answered, yes. In another text, you state, DLP's words mean the world to me, and that you and he, quote, have an unbreakable bond. Is that how you felt? She said, yes. In one text, you state, I would love to spend time with you after I graduate. Is that how you felt? Yes. I'm 66, but remember what it was like at age 17. I can understand what happened here. But here's what's important. Towards the ends of the text, page 563 of approximately 600 pages, I asked this question of the student. I said, you state to Coach De La Paz in one of your texts, quote, you told me not to text you unless it was about running or math. And I texted you this morning to have a great day, and I'm just now realizing that I shouldn't have done it, even though I wanted to. Close quotes. I asked the student, so you knew that he wanted the texting to stop? And she said, yes. The student herself testified that Coach De La Paz was a gentleman She confirmed they were never alone together. They never drove anywhere together. They both lived at home with their parents. The student testified that Coach De La Paz would support and reaffirm her while her family did not. Perhaps that is why the student said that when her stepmother read the messages and went to the school to try to have the coach fired, she was hurt. She testified, "I was not happy anymore." The student testified that Coach De La Paz had built up her confidence and that she was better in her junior year than any other year in high school. In fact, at Cabot High School, there is something called the Life Impact Award, where a senior determines who he or she is going to name as the teacher who had the most positive influence on the young student's life during high school. She was planning to have Coach De La Paz receive the Life Impact Award because he had, as she put it in the text, influenced her in the most positive way. We also called at the hearing testimony of Coach De La Paz's immediate supervisor, the head coach, Chesley White, a 40-year veteran at Cabot. He also served in the state position, I forget the title, but he was a well-respected, a long-time coach. Had just retired at the time I called him for this hearing. He voluntarily came. He waited 7 hours because he was the last guy to be called, and I felt so bad for him because he had to wait. But he testified unequivocally, yes, I know the man's character, I know what happened, and I would rehire him. It's clear that this educator's character is good. He made a mistake. Now, mind you, we're only asking that the sanction be modified. We don't dispute the facts because they're all expressed in text messages. Mr. De La Paz's co-worker stated that he is, quote, a dedicated servant to his family, a tireless contributor to his job. He's an honorable, selfless human being. This was Coach Chris Beavert, who...
Okay. You have 3 minutes left. So.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll wrap it up. Now, for the last 2 years, Jacob has been working at North Vermilion High School in Maurice, Louisiana. It's a little community about 15 minutes from Lafayette. He's hoping to work there next year. He made the principal of that school and the superintendent aware of this proceeding in the very first interview at the outset. The testimony at the hearing was clear that he was honest with everybody who questioned him about his status. Jacob's been very conscientious, the principal state, very conscientious about his position as teacher and coach, and has displayed mature and professional behavior in all capacities in his job description. Ladies and gentlemen, a suspension would effectively end his career. We are asking for a modification so that he may be held under some probation and take courses or whatever you, ladies and gentlemen, might require of him.
Okay, you have 2 minutes.
Considering the conduct involved in this case, without any inappropriate conduct, is that 2 minutes?
Of the 10.
Of the 10. Okay, well then I need to wrap it up and tell you that my brief contains all of the other cases that you can read where more serious and egregious conduct resulted in much less serious sanction.
Okay.
Thank you, and we would ask that Mr. De La Paz sanction be modified. Thank you very much.
Mr. De La Paz?
I'll try to read it quickly.
Please.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, I am humbled and grateful for the opportunity to speak before you today. In May of 2017, I was forcibly resigned from the Cabot School District amid the discovery of text messages between myself and a high school athlete that discussed the potential of a relationship after she graduated. For the record, The messages were never sexually explicit. There was never an inappropriate physical relationship, nor was there a suggestion of such. I never spoke in innuendo, nor did I ever insinuate or solicit anything malicious, immoral, or perverse from the athlete. I never asked her to hide any inappropriate relationship because there was not one. I did ask her to mask any feelings or emotions that she had for me, and I do understand that the messages discussing a potential relationship were inappropriate and unprofessional. My actions have not been without consequence. I was essentially asked to leave my alma mater, which was my dream job. I moved out of the town that I called home for 13 years. I incurred a heavy financial burden in retaining the services of an attorney. But the worst consequence for me is the embarrassment and the regret that I feel in letting down my family, my friends and my colleagues, and the female athlete involved. For the past 2 years, I have been teaching and coaching in Louisiana. I have been forthcoming and honest about every step of this process with my administration, who have mentored and supported me through it all. They put an extreme amount of faith in me when I asked for the opportunity to redeem myself. Today, I plead with this board to do the same. The students, parents, and administration at North Vermilion trust me. I have worked incredibly hard these past 2 years to earn that trust. I respectfully and humbly ask this board that you allow me to continue to remain employed at my school in Louisiana by not suspending my license, and allow me to continue to walk the redemptive path I started 2 years ago. Thank you.
Mr. Dugan? Before he sits down, do any of you have questions prior to Mr. Dugan's presentation? Okay, Mr. Dugan?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and ladies and gentlemen of the board. Taylor Dugan, attorney for the Division of Elementary and Secondary Education. And in this case, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be speaking on behalf of the PLSB, Mr. Conrad de la Paz's appeal here to the State Board. I'm going to ask the board today to uphold the sanction that the Ethics Hearing Subcommittee determined. In the transcript and in the briefs and in all the text messages that have been provided to the board beforehand, page 712 of the exhibits, there was the findings and recommendations that the hearing subcommittee put down. And I think they got it right, because originally the ethics subcommittee voted unanimously to revoke Mr. de la Paz's license. The ethics hearing subcommittee, after a hearing that lasted from 9 o'clock a.m. to 7 o'clock p.m., and had the evidence that you guys have seen today, over 600 pages of text messages from 25 days between a 27-year-old teacher, we're talking about a teacher here, and a student. And they determined that they were going to give him some grace. They lowered that sanction from a revocation to a 5-year suspension with the maximum fine of $500. He's already been given some grace. The PLSB wants to show that this is a case that they take very seriously. This was not just a crush that the student had on Mr. de la Paz. This is a student where he reciprocated those feelings, and it's outlined in all of those texts. He did tell this student to keep this relationship secret. At the lower hearing, there was the complaint that was included from the school district when they made the original allegation. These are Mr. de la Paz's words in these texts to the student. It will be tough, but we have to do it to protect each other. We just have to be very good actors. I have to make it seem like you're just another runner, even though secretly you know you're much more to me and will be my future girlfriend. And you have to act like I'm just a coach, knowing that I will be your future boyfriend. We can do it. It'll be tough, but I'm willing to do it to protect our future. Later states, gosh, this year will be so long, but maybe having all that to look forward to will make it go faster, because I really cannot wait until that first day where I just finally get to spend time with you as Jacob and not Coach de la Paz. I just get to be close to you without having to worry about anything, and I just get to enjoy being with you. You'll definitely still catch me staring, and now you know why. This was a willful and intentional violation of the Code of Ethics, of Standard 1 and Standard 2, and it's outlined in the evidence that has been presented to the board prior to today. I highlighted a few texts, because I know I only have 10 minutes, but there is a mountain of evidence that this was more than just a crush. For example, the educator states that may I have a moment, Madam
Sure.
Chair? Let's see. For example, on May 23rd, 2017, at 7:48 p.m., the educator admits that he knew his actions could get him terminated. It's hard to pay for dates if I'm out of a job, LOL. Later that day at 8:20 p.m., the educator states, okay, do you know that all they would need is to pull the script of you and I conversing through text, and I could never teach or coach again. The educator was well aware of his action. This was a willful violation of the Code of Ethics. He also states on May 23rd, text to the student, I hate that it's like that, but in the job I'm in, it is. My hope would be that even if we didn't text as often, that it would not make you not want to date me anymore. It would break my heart now if you go through. These are the texts. These are the words. These are in the 600 plus pages of text messages spanning over 25 days that Mr. De La Paz and this student conversed. This is a teacher, 27-year-old teacher, texting with a student. And that's what we're here today. We're here to see if whether or not that violates the Code of Ethics. There is a mountain of text between the educator and the student where he states that he loves her. For example, on May 4th, 2017 at 10:24 p.m., he states, educator says, absolutely agree. If I don't see you, make sure we run into each other the next 3 days. Again, I'm proud of you and I love you. This is the first record of this educator saying to the student that he loves her. It goes on and on. For example, on May 8th, 2017, student says, are you sure? Sometimes I feel like you tell me things I want to be down on myself. And you talk to me because I talk to you all the time like you don't want to. Educator, I do encourage you a lot, but I'm always honest with you. I'm never fake, and I genuinely enjoy talking to you. Educator, I love you with all my heart. Remember, student, I hope you do. There is a mountain of these texts. I just have 10 minutes, so I'm just highlighting some of them. But I know the board here has read the record, has read the transcript. They know that this was going back and forth. It was just not a crush. It's had an adverse effect on the student. I heard earlier they said that this student here came from a home, was not getting that support. The family is here today because they care about this case. In the hearing, from the transcript, on page 103, the mother testified that we put her into counseling because she really just didn't seem like she wanted to talk about it. And so she went to counseling the first summer. On page 222, the student states that she went to therapy during the summer of 2017 and the summer of 2018. This caused an effect on the student, a negative effect on the student. Not only was this a willful violation of the Code of Ethics, but it did have that negative effect on the student. This is multiple violations. This is 600 plus pages of text messages that this was a violation of the Code of Ethics. So I'm here today asking this panel to uphold that sanction, a 5-year suspension and a $500 fine, and any training that the board sees fit. But again, this is not a case of just a crush. This is not a case this is a case of a willful intent on for the violation of the Code of Ethics, excuse me. Even further, just text messages from 12:15 a.m. on 5/25, where they talk about there's no physical relationship. He is encouraging that says, I know, well, she states, student, gosh, I'm picturing my head right now. You calling me babe and hugging me is awesome. Just hugging you differently than I do at meets is going to be so special, and us holding hands. I know, educator. The hugs will be a sufferer, my feeling for sure. I'm most looking forward to holding your hand and just spending time with you, watching movies, just cuddled up on the couch, just being with you, and just being ourselves around each other. This is the evidence that you guys have had. And I know that after you guys have looked through the transcript, have looked through and read all the text, again, this is just a few little bits of it. And so with the reservation for the rest of my time, oh, and also there was some comments over here that this kind of started in May. There was testimony that it actually, he had started developing feelings for her in February, March. Again, this is all in the transcript. This is all from the hearing. And so if there's any more time, I would like to entertain questions.
Yeah, you have 2.5 minutes.
2.5 minutes?
Anybody have any questions? Anyone have any questions at this point? And remember, it'll be 3 separate things: findings of fact, conclusion of law, and recommendations. So if you have any questions with regard, Dr. Moore?
I do have some questions.
Okay.
Can you get closer? Yes, at this point in time, as we've looked at many different cases over my year on the term, I still at times feel like the timeline for a suspension or probation is varied. how did that 5-year timeline come into decision as compared to others, in which I think we saw one last month or the month before that was a 3-year timeline? Can you talk to me about that?
Definitely, and so right now the PLC has the sanctioning matrix, and that's what they're following. Originally, in this case right here, if you look at the transcript, the Ethics Hearing Subcommittee had stated on pages 351 through 353 that they went back and forth on a revocation and a suspension in this case. However, they did take into the fact that Mr. De La Paz's age, and even one of the panel members, stated that they had to weigh destroying his career or putting more kids in danger. So I think in this case, they went through that sanctioning matrix. I can't speak on behalf of them, but looked and went through those factors. Was this a willful or intentional misconduct? Was it multiple violations? Did it have a negative effect on that student? And went through those to determine what type of sanction it would be. So this, again, is one that's in the record that they went back and forth on revocation, because the Ethics Subcommittee originally did recommend revocation for this educator. And so what the panel does is they go through that sanctioning matrix and kind of apply what facts they have.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Dr. Moore?
A little bit. Can you, and I'm sorry, I probably ask this question every other month, but speak to me the differences between probation, suspension.
So probation, the educator can still return to the classroom.
Okay.
So there can be conditions also put on that probation, but while that educator is on probation, they can still teach during that time. They might have to complete those trainings. They will have to pay that fine within, usually I believe it's 90 days of the state board order. And if they don't complete that, then the board has the authority to suspend them. A suspension is they cannot go back to the classroom. Okay. So until they complete that suspension and pay the fine.
In this case, in another state, is it because the other state looks to this state for the license?
I beg your pardon?
Since he's now teaching in another state, does that state check with our state for license?
So what we would do in this case is we would, well, and our rules do state that we send notice to the employee entity if the educator is employed. So that's how they would get notice as far as if the board was to order a suspension. Also, it's reported to the NASDTech, and where schools can go on and look at that, and it would show up as a suspension.
Okay. And then one final question. When a PLB is alerted of a situation in which a teacher might have had contact with a student outside of the classroom, does the board always request text messages? Is that common procedure? Or these were turned in, or what is that?
I bet Mr. James could answer that. That's because that would be more of an something
Okay.
that would be investigated. I know in this case what had happened was that the school district had made the complaint, the allegation, and they had attached some of the text messages. The mother had looked through the student's phone and saw these text messages and took them to the school district in this case. However, in other cases, Mr. James, would you be able to elaborate however text messages are acquired?
Yes, Dr. Moore, the initial allegation that was submitted contained the text messages. So
Okay.
when they submit it to our office, sometimes it has a lot of information. Sometimes we retrieve it through the investigation. So
Okay.
therefore, it becomes part of what you have in front of you today.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. That's it. Yeah.
Ms. Chambers?
Just building on that, is there any insight that you can share that helps us understand why we went from revocation to suspension with 5?
Just what was in the transcript, because when they go and deliberate, the Ethics Hearing Subcommittee, they go off the record. And so what was said during the deliberation, I'm not sure, but Mr. Shirey, who was on the panel that day, he did on page 351 through 353 of the transcript discuss that this was a very difficult case for them, and they kept going back and forth between revocation and suspension. And they had to weigh the factors of whether putting more kids in danger or the fact that he was just a young person here. So I think, I can't speak for them themselves, but it seemed like they were given some grace there.
There was nothing specific that really changed their opinion?
Correct.
In the evidence? Okay, thank you.
On their findings and recommendations, that was page 712 of the hearing. What they wrote down there at the very bottom is, if I may read it for the board.
Please.
There is no evidence that the educator is beyond rehabilitation, and there has been no prior sanction before the current violation standards 1 and 2. Therefore, this committee finds that the sanction of permanent revocation is warranted. We too think that 5-year suspension and a fine of $500 would be more appropriate. We feel that a lesser sanction would not give the impression that the PLSB does not take such violations seriously.
Anyone else? Okay, would you, you may have to go get it, but would you clarify for us exactly what Standard 1 and Standard
ma'am.
2 state? Were you finished with your presentation?
Yes, ma'am. Let me get my rules. Are my rules over? Thank you, ma'am. And Madam Chair, Standard 1 is an educator maintains a professional relationship with each student, both in and outside of the classroom. And Standard 2, Madam Chair, an educator maintains competence regarding his or her professional practice, inclusive of professional and ethical behavior, skills, knowledge, disposition, and responsibilities relating to his or her organizational position.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you finished with your 10-minute presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Do I still have time?
2.5 minutes.
Huh?
He had 2.5.
Yeah, you had 2.5 minutes left.
I can see with that. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay. And now 5 minutes for rebuttal, is that? No?
Under these rules, that's it, unless
That's it, okay, thank you.
It does state in the rules that what's that? The hearing is on the consideration of the transcript, the pleadings, and oral argument only. However, at the request of the State Board Chair, the educator and the PLSB investigator for the case, or chief investigator, may provide testimony. And so that's the 10 minutes, or if you would like to hear from the chief investigator.
Okay. Did anyone?
I would just wonder if the attorney or Mr. Delapaz had anything else they wanted to add to, since they've heard.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you hear her? Please identify yourself again.
I'm Joe Giglio, attorney for Jacob Delapaz. And just to further amplify Dr. Moore's question, the suspension would take Jacob out of the classroom. We would think a probation with training would be appropriate given the other cases. The other cases, for example, one where the female teacher took the young 16-year-old male student on a joyride on an ATV. They had a wreck. The boy student got injured, and the teacher took the boy home, gave him a shower, and attempted oral sex on the boy, and she was given probation. Far more extreme conduct. My brief has 3 or 4 pages of similar cases to that bizarre case where probation was given. Here, there's no question that his conduct is all revealed in the text, but that's the good thing. There was nothing else, and it was clear from the text that he wanted the relationship to wait, which is the appropriate response. The student, nevertheless, continued to pursue reassurance. And the testimony was clear. It is admitted, I believe her testimony, that she went to 2 therapy sessions, but she testified that that was because of what happened when her parents, I would suggest, overreacted. Her stepmother overreacted to the situation. So we kindly ask that this Jacob Delapaz be given a modified sanction that would allow him to continue teaching in Louisiana where he's needed, and his principal says they would like him to remain. And that would be at most probation. We would suggest that the case law, the jurisprudence, if you will, the prior Arkansas Department of Education board cases it varies from written reprimand to admonition to probation. Nothing as extreme as what happened here. I'd also suggest that it's not appropriate to sanction anyone, quote unquote, to send a message. Instead, the sanction should fit the crime. And here, we had a teacher who was a young teacher who was caught in the hard place of having to respond to a student who was looking for reassurance, and he did give it to her. And in the process, unfortunately, the relationship developed, but he said it must wait. So thank you for your consideration. And Mr. De La Paz is here if you have any questions directly of him under oath.
Okay. And he has been teaching the last 2 years while we were waiting for this case to come to a close. Anybody have any more discussion, more questions? Ms. Newton?
Ask a question of Mr. De La Paz. Can you tell me about your interactions with students now and what precautions you're taking to make sure this would never happen again?
Sure. Well, within the district that I went to interview with in Louisiana, they made it clear through my interview with the assistant superintendent and with my principal that within their district they have a certain set of guidelines for any electronic communication with students should that take place. Anything that you any correspondence with students has to be turned in electronically with a document that is filled out and turned into the state board or the district, letting them know what that interaction was. From my standpoint, I have not had any electronic communication with any students at North Vermilion except through my school email account. Me and my principal have worked that out. Like I said in my statement, he's mentored me through all of it. We meet on a regular basis to discuss growth and maturity from that. Because I also coach down there, any Group Me or Remind Me apps, I also include him in those as well. Any emails that I send to students, I also CC my principal in those emails. And so I make as many people aware of my interactions through those processes as I can, as discussed with my principal. So certainly it is made me take more appropriate steps to communicate with students. Unfortunately, I put myself in a position where I had to learn it this way. But like I said in my statement, for 2 years I've tried my best to earn that trust from my administration, and respectfully, I feel like the fact that my principal has gone to bat for me with a letter proves that I've done that.
What about you're talking about communication outside the classroom and athletic arena?
Mm-hmm.
What about relationships? What have you done to make sure your relationships are kept at an appropriate teacher-student?
Again, that's something that I met regularly with my principal about, especially when I was first hired that first year. I'm a lot more aware and perceptive to what my interaction with students looks like to the outside world and the outside perception of what that looks like. I understand being a young coach around female students that spotlight, that scope is even more so on me, maybe more so than any other any other profession or anything like that. And so it's definitely made me more conscientious of that and what it means to strictly be there for an educational basis and to not let it get to the point where my rapport with students puts me in the situation to where to where I'm teetering the line between what is professional and what is not. And so that has this incident, this unprofessionalism has allowed me to reflect on that for some time, and I think up to this point corrected what needed to be corrected from a personal standpoint.
Anyone else? Dr. Hill?
Yes, your counsel made mention to something that I just want to, as we decide what we're going to do, that we should bring to surface. I have 2 daughters, and I've actually dealt with this situation, almost identical. So it's very personal. And parents do overreact. Because you're not a parent yet, is that right?
Yes, sir. I'm not a parent.
Okay. So when you have a daughter who you place in a classroom under supervision of somebody, when you see a text of something inappropriate, we do overreact. And I did overreact because that's my daughter who I trust you. And so what you've done, broken the trust of parents to go to school and place them there. However, we all fall short. And we all need grace. But what have you learned from this situation that can put parameters around yourself, as I heard our teacher ask as a principal, to make sure that you don't put parents in situations where my daughters, anybody's daughters in that situation, that those text messages, those feelings led you to a level of unprofessionalism, which you just called. You identified it. And so that's, you own up to it, and that's it. But do you realize a parent and their daughters, the trust that has been broken in that process for us to make a decision on allowing you to go back into the classroom, and what will happen if you broke that trust again? I mean, this is serious. Really, 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 really serious, that you have to not allow your personal feelings to influence your public judgment, which you did.
Yes, sir.
And I just, from a parent of 2 daughters who I've done it exactly, I go through they're older now, but I can't get their phone, they're grown. But as 16, 17-year-olds, I want to know what's going on.
Yes, sir.
And so it wasn't overreaction. It was a protection mechanism that parents are called to provide, protect, and pastor their children. And this is a very difficult situation for me because I know what I wanted for that individual at the time when I saw that, because I placed my daughter in that situation. So I just hope, as this board rules, that you understand, if given that opportunity, that grace has been granted to you against what the state has recommended to us. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Ms. McPatridge?
I know you said you were a coach. Are you teaching as well outside
yes, ma'am.
of coaching?
I'm a math teacher.
Okay. Can you also let us know, aside from the probation at this point, what other courses have you taken to help strengthen you against doing this again?
I had to, in addition to professional development that I had to take as part of being a new hire down there, I also had to take, as an agreement between myself and my assistant superintendent and my principal, I also had to do an additional 3 hours of Louisiana ethics training. And I also did a 3-hour seminar on social networking. Off the top of my head, I don't recall what it was through the Louisiana State Board of Education. And I did a 3-hour thing with the ethics, and then a 3-hour social media networking training through their online program, similar to the ideas that we have, the Arkansas ideas that we have here. So those 6 hours I got on a condition of being hired through agreement with my principal and my assistant superintendent.
Anything else? Discussions, questions? Are we ready for a motion? And remember, we're going to do it in 3 parts. The first is findings of fact.
I have a motion on that, I think. I think that there's a finding of fact that the educator engaged in inappropriate communication with a female student via text messages.
Okay, do I have a second? Motion by Ms. Newton, second by Mr. Williamson. Do we need to take a roll call? Okay, would you do that, please?
Forgive me, this is an old roll call sheet, so let me make some adjustments here real quickly. All right, Dr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Williamson,
Yes.
Ms. Chambers,
Yes.
Ms. McFetridge,
Yes.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Ms. Newton,
Yes.
Ms. Dean.
Yes.
Okay, it's unanimous.
Okay, motion passes. Next, we will talk about the conclusion of law, which is my understanding, do we believe, based on the evidence, that he violated standard 1 and 2, 1 or 2, or Ms. Newton?
I make a motion that we follow determination that the educator violated both standard 1 and 2.
Do you have a second, Mr. Williamson? Motion by Ms. Newton, second by Mr. Williamson. All in favor? Roll call.
Dr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Williamson,
Yes.
Ms. Chambers,
Yes.
Ms. McFetridge,
Yes.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Ms. Newton,
Yes.
Ms. Dean.
Yes.
Again, 7 votes in favor.
Okay, motion passed. As far as recommendations, do I have a motion or a suggestion?
I have a suggestion and then we can discuss.
Please.
Okay. I suggest that we give a 3-year probation with a $250 fine and then give appropriate training to go with that.
3-year probation, $250 fine, and training. Do you have others who want to comment regarding that?
What would that training?
There's a code of ethics training video. There's a PLSB social media guideline training, and then there's a book on active, ethical, professional behavior for responsible educators. So all of that would be training with reflections to go along with that.
Okay, further discussion? Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Motion by Ms. Newton, seconded by Ms. McFetridge. All in favor? Roll call.
I think we've discussed.
Yes, quick.
Yeah.
I don't mean quick, I'm sorry.
How with him being in Louisiana, how are those things making sure that, how do we wrap that up for
Mr. Dugan can
how do we make
answer
sure
that
all
for
this
us.
and we get feedback to?
To my understanding would be that he would have to complete those conditions. If he does not complete those conditions, then this board could suspend his license. Is that correct, Mr. James? That would be my understanding.
How will we know this process is ongoing through this three-year period of time? I mean, how do we have those checks and balances to validate that he is
I
continuing?
think the training has to be completed within, is it 60 days? I can't remember.
Not the training, to my understanding. I know the fine has to be paid within, is it 90
The
days?
fine, okay.
I believe 90 days of the state board order. Mr. James, the training, I mean, I see when I look
Mr.
at
James, do you want to come to the podium, please?
that they, it'll show when they have completed it. But I don't know how it's policed.
In that letter that's sent to the educator and their attorney, they will be advised as the requirements they have to submit it to our office where we check mark that that's been completed. If it's not completed or if they don't pay the fine in an amount of time, then it'll go into licensure where they will put that license, it'll become a licensure action for failure to adhere to the parameters you set forth.
So the school where he is, or any school where he may go, will get notice, and then y'all will flag it for a timeline.
Yeah. The 3-year, look, if it's 3-year probation, during that time, he has those requirements to submit that information to us within that time frame. Now, as far as the school will be notified initially, from after you make your decision, the school will be notified by letter from our office as well.
Okay, and if he changed schools, would that letter follow him?
No, if it's a probation,
No,
Microphone.
no, microphone.
Microphone.
if it is a probation, then the school is not notified of, we don't send a letter out to the school. We send a letter to the complainant in that case. So it's just a suspension or revocation. If that person is still teaching, that we send a letter to that school.
Wait till you come to the microphone. We're being live streamed, so.
May I suggest that this board could make it a requirement upon Mr. Delapaz to furnish evidence from his employer, whoever it may be, from time to time. We suspect it's going to be Vermilion High School where he's teaching now, that he must furnish from his employer the necessary evidence that you all require that he is fulfilling the terms of his probation. He also has evidence, he also has information that, did I say what you intended to say?
When I first got hired, I applied for a Louisiana teaching license through Reciprocity, and part of that was turning over my Arkansas teaching license. And then once through the paperwork, I notified the Louisiana State Board of the pending investigation 2 years ago when it started, and so I can't get my teaching license in Louisiana. They won't grant it until these proceedings are done. And so when I trust that if the motion passes with any training, the Louisiana State Board is going to be notified of the training requirements that I have to complete in that probationary period. And so I don't know if that helps answer how you would know, but certainly my principal, knowing of the proceedings anyway, and will be notified of whatever the final recommendation is, would certainly be willing to provide quarterly or monthly progress on any training that you would require me to do. So I don't know if that helps.
I think what your attorney is saying is another way you can show personal responsibility is that if you take it upon yourself to be in communication and notify and take the training and not rely on your mentor.
The State Board, yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
For the entire 3 years.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
that's what that's the piece. I don't want it to be a 90-day, he completes it and we don't hear anything else over the process. I mean, I want a thorough 3-year update quarterly, however that's going to be back to them, you know, that with your mentor writing and saying we've had no evidence of any inappropriate contact, by granting you this opportunity.
Yes, sir.
And you can be assured that you will make sure that happens. You'll take the initiative to do
Yes, sir.
that.
So does the motion need to be amended to that degree, or the motion, does it need to be amended to include who's going to be in contact with you all, who's responsible, those kinds of things?
Madam Chair, I think that would be the cleanest way to do it, is if the motion would be amended to include those items, so then we would have that on the record.
Okay. Ms. Newton, do you want to amend your motion?
Yes. Dr. Hill, you want to do it quarterly or semi-annually? How you want?
Whatever, teacher, I mean, how.
Probably end of semester would probably work. So, a report from the district or the educator?
I think he was saying that.
The educator? Educator at the end of the semester that you've had no other violations and that you are actively working on rehabilitation.
And I guess we could say from the educator and the person who's hired it.
Yeah.
So do.
Yes, ma'am.
So I think both
I would
would probably-
suggest that he be required to furnish evidence from his principal,
That
no matter what principal. Because the same school could hire him, but a different principal.
Okay.
Does that work?
So evidence from the principal at the end of each semester that he is fulfilling the terms of his probation and has gotten into no further consequences from bad decisions.
Just to clarify, in case the semesters are different, in Louisiana, there are 2 semesters, the fall, winter, and the spring. Is it
Yes.
is it a proper understanding that he would have to do it twice?
Yes.
Thank you.
So we have a motion that was amended. Will the person second the amended motion?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Ms. Donovan, do we need to restate it, or did you get that? Okay, thank you. All in favor, roll call?
Dr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Williamson,
No.
Ms. Chambers,
Yes.
Ms. McFetridge,
Yes.
Dr. Moore,
Yes.
Ms. Newton,
Yes.
Ms. Dean.
Yes.
6 in favor, 1 against.
Mrs. Chambers has something she'd like to say.
I just want to make a comment, because it's a tough, it needed to be a tough vote. My background is human resources, and so pattern is always what you worry about. And we heard you say many good things about the acknowledgement of not being professional. But this goes so far beyond professionalism. It's really poor judgment. And I just want to make sure, I didn't hear you say this, and I don't even know that the coursework will get at it, but it's not just about texts. It's about ensuring you never put yourself in a situation again where a relationship like this could develop. And you have to be really conscious of that, because it's not a level playing field with a child, a student. No matter how mature they seem, this wasn't a fair fight. And so it's so important that on a very, very personal level, you take this opportunity to kind of, I don't want to say do-over because the damage is done, but ensure that it's never done again. I just want to make sure you heard that from us.
Thank you. And, Ms. Newton?
I just have one other comment along those lines. Dr. Hill brought it out very well that you are entrusted with parents' children that they love very much, and you've got to take that trust seriously. You cannot ever put yourself in a situation like this again. Cannot violate that trust. You've got to go way above what anybody else in that district does. You've got to avoid the very appearance of evil. You've got to do what it takes to be a good educator. You've got to do what it takes to make sure those kids get a good education. They're entrusting you every day with those children, and you've got to make sure that you do what you're supposed to do and not put yourself, and more importantly, not put a child in this situation ever again. And I hope you understand that we don't want to see you back here again. And if we see you back, the outcome's going to be a whole lot different than what it was today. So I hope you understand that we have taken this very seriously, and we're expecting much better out of you than what we heard today.
Anything else?
Madam Chair, I want to make sure when I draft the order, I have it correct. So it's a 3 years probation, $250 fine. Thank you, ma'am. And if you don't mind, Madam Chair, just those trainings that were brought up.
Ms. Newton has it written down.
And then also the evidence from the principal twice a year that he's following his probation.
Whoever the principal may be.
Yes, ma'am. Was there anything else? Okay, thank you.
We didn't hear from the parents, but I think express for the board, we hope that this young lady is doing fine. Being nothing further, I think we're ready for the next item. School Superintendent Assessment for P-12 District Level Administrators. You are free to go. Mr. Dugan?
Morning, all. Michael Rowland with the Department Division, filling in for Ms. Luno today. Educational Testing Service has updated its school superintendent assessment. Arkansas is currently using the SSA 60621 as its district level administrator license assessment. ETS is replacing this with the 6991. In April, ETS brought a copy of the 6991 for review by Arkansas administrators and administrator preparation faculty. ETS presented data from a multi-state standard setting study, which included a test study value. As a result of the state review, participants recommend a cut score of 157. To allow administrative preparation providers to update their programs of study, the department is recommending a start date of September 1, 2020. For board action, the department recommends adopting the School Superintendent Assessment 6991 with a cut score of 157, effective September 1, 2020.
Does anyone have any questions? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
I do.
Oh, sorry, I
No,
apologize.
I
I
wasn't
looked
quick.
away too soon.
Yeah, is this a big change? Is this something you've received feedback from superintendents with any concerns, or?
We did. At the April review, that was their opportunity to review it. ETS updates their test when there's 20% or so changes in international standards, and they felt it was warranted to do that in this case. And so they're replacing our existing one, which we are currently using as our district level, with this one. So we're recommending, as the panel that reviewed it and the PLSB also agreed, to replace it with the 6991.
Okay, thank you.
And this will be for new superintendents?
Ma'am?
This will be for new
Yes.
superintendents?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
No more questions? Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Moved by Dr. Moore, second by Ms. Dean. Sorry, I didn't see you, didn't turn around fast enough. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, approval of the dynamic learning map cut scores.
Good morning, Hope Worsham from the Department of Education, Director of Assessment, and I believe we have a few slides I'm going to walk you through today. We are requesting approval of the dynamic learning maps cut scores. Closer, thank you. 2018-2019 was our first administration of the dynamic learning maps. This is the assessment that we use with our alternate population. It's the 1% of students that are severely cognitively disabled and by federal law are allowed to take a alternate assessment instead of taking ACT Aspire. We do require within our rural state board approval of the cut scores, and this will be the first year that we have scores and would like to approve the consortium adopted cut scores. So I'll give you a little more information about the scores that we're seeing. So first of all, the dynamic learning maps is given in grades 3 through 10. This year we did give the test in grade 11 for math and ELA. That's an anomaly. It's just because our students in 11th grade have not had a high school test. So moving forward, it will be grades 3 through 10, just like ACT Aspire. Dynamic learning maps is given in 10 other states, 11 including Arkansas. And our first administration was in 18-19. So the ELA and math cut scores were established prior to us joining the consortium. There were teachers from across the other states that were members at that time that participated in that process. The Technical Advisory Committee gave input all throughout the process. We've reviewed the documents and feel that the process they went through is very technically sound and defensible, and the other states have all adopted the cut scores as proposed by the consortium. I provided you with the cut scores there on the screen. What's important for us is these are the data from Arkansas this year, and so what we would be proposing are that students that are at target or advanced, which is the far right column that you see there, is equivalent to ready and exceeding in our Arkansas system for ACT Aspire. So the nice thing about DLM is there are 4 cut levels, just like for ACT Aspire, and we're able to assign points the same as we do for Aspire. So emerging would be 0 points in the ESSA system, approaching would be a half, and so on, just like 1 for at target and advanced is 1 or 1.5, depending on the numbers. So across the state for Arkansas and ELA, you see the percentages on the far right of our number of students that were scoring in those top 2 categories. And these are the numbers for math, so anywhere from 24 down to 13% of our students scoring at those 2 levels. This assessment is given across the year, so it's not given all at one time in the end of the year, which is why we made the switch to DLM. The test is given in small little chunks, and students are able to digest that information as needed and when ready, so teachers can give the test at any point throughout the year in small little bits. For science, when we came on, the cut scores were already established for 4, 5, 6, 8, and high school. So again, we were not part of that process, but we do feel that the process was followed, was sound, technically sound. The Technical Advisory Committee signed off on that, and we think that the cut scores are appropriate. But Arkansas did get to participate in the establishment of the cut scores for a couple of grades that were not already established for science, and that would be 3 and 7. So you can see Arkansas had 4 educators out of the 9, and that is because Arkansas is the only state right now that's using the science assessment in every grade, and we do that because we also do that with ACT Aspire. So we had nice representation on this panel for the science cut scores. As soon as we joined on, DLM was very open to having us participate in any activity that we could and send our educators. Again, the same approach was applied across consistently, all 3 assessments. We feel that's technically sound. Technical Advisory Committee was a part of the process the entire time. There were 5 steps that they followed. The panels went through and reviewed, they recommended, and they came back to consensus. So for Arkansas, I'm going to skip over this, grade 7, we were a part of that committee, and we were also part of the grade 3 committee. But for Arkansas, we would propose that the cut scores that the consortium recommends we also adopt in our state. And these are the percentages of Arkansas students on the science assessment that are scoring at the top 2 levels. So ADE is requesting state board approval of the DLM proposed cut scores for ELA, math, and science. And I will entertain any questions you have now.
Dr. Moore?
Yeah, I know there are some challenges when you give a test the first year. What was the overall feedback of the assessment by teachers and districts?
Yeah, great question. The feedback was that there were some challenges. Giving the assessment across the year, giving science in every grade level was new. We had only done 5, 7, and 10 previously in a portfolio style. The feedback overall has been that the assessment is a good educational tool, and we are actually doing training right now. I have people training in co-ops on how to use the assessment as an instructional tool. And so we have about 1,000, I may be telling you, 600 educators signed up across 15 sessions this summer to come to that training. And that has been very well received and great feedback.
That's great. As far as I noticed on the scores, the amount ready decreases per grade level. Do you all have any ideas behind why that may be occurring?
I do not, and again, with it being our first year, this is our baseline data, and so I would probably know more as the assessment goes forward. As our teachers get comfortable giving this style of assessment, I would hope to see those scores move up.
Yep. Thank you.
Mr. Williamson? Ms. McFetridge? Anyone on this side? Okay, I have a question. I'm assuming since the N number is probably not 10 or 15, this score will not go into figuring the letter grade for the school, is that correct?
That is a question I would have to defer to Ms. Kaufman on.
Deborah Kaufman, Department of Ed. All students' scores are included into the accountability unless they meet the guidelines for exclusion. Just because they're a low number, those numbers are not reported publicly. If you go to our report card, you'll see that through our suppression, those numbers are limited so as not to identify a student to the public, but every student is included in accountability.
Thank you for clarifying.
Question.
Mr. Secretary?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could you go back to the ELA results slide, please? So 3 through 7, you see pretty strong results, and then there's a significant decline in the number 8 through 11. Any conclusions that y'all have been able to draw from that at this point?
Not at this point. Again, with it being baseline data and with our teachers getting used to the new format of the assessment could have some impact on that. The training this summer, again, has been very well received. So I think that we will see the assessment being better utilized next year. And it really should be given throughout the year as an instructional tool. And I think some of our districts were not in tune to that yet this year. So I don't have a reason, but that could be part of why.
And is there anything we can learn about that approach to assessment that might apply on a larger scale as giving it in smaller chunks through the course of the year? The reason I ask that is because, states do have the opportunity for some flexibility in how they conduct their assessment and what type of assessments they have. So just curious if you have any thoughts about that methodology.
Yeah, I think that was one of our draws to changing to DLM, is that to see how this approach worked. There is a lot of evidence that good formative assessment across the year is the foundation for good learning. And so I think that, yes, there is room in our overall state system to look at eventually could we move to some type of assessment that is similar to this generally. And I don't think that it's out of the question. I think it's just a matter of how do we use assessment. We don't want to overburden schools with testing too much, but help them to understand that assessment is a tool for learning and not, to inform learning, not of learning.
Thank you.
Did they get the same kind of result as far as percent of students tested that we got with the ACT Aspire?
As far as like 95% of students testing, yes. So the percent of students taking the assessment was in line with where it should be.
Anything else? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Dr. Moore moves. Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Dean, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before she gets too far away, Madam Chair, some of you may have seen the paper today, some of you may have not, but Hope is going to be leaving our team and joining the Little Rock School District team. And Mr. Poores recommended her for the position of Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction. So that's a great opportunity for her and a great move for Little Rock. But we will miss her, for sure.
Thank you, Ms. Worsham. Okay, the next item is 1240 waivers. Ms. McLaughlin? I will remind you that 5B was pulled, so we will do A, C, and then thereafter.
Yes, ma'am. Kelly McLaughlin with the Division of Elementary and Secondary Education. First, we have action item A5A, Southside School District As a reminder, the district will have 20 minutes to make their presentation. Any opposition will also have 20 minutes as well, and the district will then have 5 minutes to respond before the question and answer begins. As you know, Act 1240 of 2015 allows a school district to petition the State Board of Education for all or some of the waivers granted to open enrollment public charter schools. And we do have representatives from the Southside School District appearing before the board for petitions for waivers of class size and teaching load. Their 90 days will expire on September 19th. And they are requesting for 3 years, ending on June 30th, 2022. We have Roger Rich, Superintendent, Novella Humphrey, the Director of Curriculum and Federal Programs, and Dr. Kimberly Crosby, Assistant Professor of Education and Director of Teacher Education at Lyon College, and you will want to swear them in.
Help remind me, is this considered like a charter and conversion charter where it's a verbal contract? So they need to be put under, they need to be sworn in, or is this, they do?
They do need to all three be sworn in.
Okay.
Yes.
So if
anyone except a lawyer, and I don't believe any of those three are lawyers.
Mr. Rich doesn't need a lawyer. If you'll stand and raise your hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay, you may approach the podium.
Roger Rich, I'm Superintendent of Southside School District, just south of Batesville. And Madam Chair of the Board, Secretary Key, thank you for the opportunity to come today. I have two individuals with me today who are really the architect behind all the work, and that's Novella Humphrey, our curriculum coordinator. Anything great that's done within our school district, she actually does it, and her hands are all over that. And Dr. Crosby with Lyon College, a great partner of ours. So as superintendent of schools, I think one of the most important things that I'm tasked with is to put high quality people in the classroom. That's where it all takes place. And so I kind of want to tell our story today, if I can, about how we want to make sure that we have great teachers in the classroom, and our innovative way that we've tried to come up with here to combat the teacher shortage in our area, if I could. We were a teacher cadet pilot school when it first started, and the neat thing about that now is we're starting to see those students graduate and become certified teachers. Tell a couple stories of individuals that I'm very proud of. First young lady, she contacted us about a month ago, and 11 days short of her 20th birthday, she has her teaching certification. She left us with 54 concurrent credit hours. She got into the teacher education program at Arkansas State after her first semester, caused some issues there trying to figure out how those obstacles and barriers were to be to go around, and we're extremely proud of her. She has her certification. She's going to get her master's degree at Harding University, and at 21 years old, we'll be recruiting her back to be back at her alma mater, teaching in her classroom and doing great things for kids. Another story that I'm equally as proud of, a young lady took a different path, had a child as a junior in high school, and could have taken a lot of people off that path, but she continued to go with the support system she had at both home and at school. Her goal was to be a nurse, so her future story is what we're all about at Southside, trying to make future stories come true. We helped her go that direction, and she had a change of heart, which is great as well. You know, you want to find out what you don't want to do early and not waste a lot of time and money. But 3 years after high school, she now has her teaching certification, decided she didn't want to be a nurse, wants to be a teacher. We did not have an opening in the area that she is certified in or would be able to help us, and she's teaching in a neighboring district, and I hope they don't get too used to having her, because we'll be recruiting her back to come back to work as well. But those are the stories, and those are the things that kind of get us to where we're going today. These things don't happen by accident. We have great partners, and we're very, very blessed and very lucky. But our strong partnership with our two-year community college, with Lyon College, and with other universities is at an all-time high right now, and we're very fortunate and proud of that. We have a conversion charter at our 9 through 12, so that gives us some opportunities, 9 through 12. But some of our other areas, we don't have that, and that's what we're looking at today. We had bi-monthly meetings with UACCB when we first started our conversion charter. Sit-down meeting with their leadership team every other month, which we've been able to do some fantastic things for kids by having those meetings. But that's grown to not just Southside and UACCB, it's grown to 8 area high schools that come together bi-monthly with Lyon College, with UACCB, and other representatives in that area to do what's best for kids, do what's best for education in Independence County. So our goal with this, when we sit down and started talking, we wanted to try to develop welders, nurses, all those type of things for our community. But sad to say, we did not really take care of ourselves. Collectively, education in Independence County was the second largest non-manufacturer employer in our county. And we were taking care of everybody else but ourselves. So we wanted to try to do some things to grow our teachers and create that teacher pipeline coming back within our schools. So our goal is not only to recruit, but our goal is to retain great teachers, because they're the ones that make the difference. So one way to do that is to reduce the time to degree and the cost. So with the hard work of these two ladies and others, you can get a 4-year degree in Independence County, going to UACCB and Lyon College for $15,000. And that's before Pell or anything else. So those that are eligible for Pell can get it for less than that. They sit down with a seamless transition on how you could do a 4-year degree and stay right there at home and make it very affordable for our kids and for our parents. If you have a student that or a child of yours that's went on to college recently or is going right now, it's quite expensive. So anything you can do to keep that cost down, we definitely want to do so. So the time to degree with our partnership with our colleges, over half of our student body that graduated our senior class has taken at least one concurrent credit class. Oh, and half of those kids have at least a semester or more. So those are the things that we want to make sure that we do, that we cut that down to make it easier for them to cut the costs down. We had a formal MOU that was developed by Lyon College and UACCB to ensure that they can get that 4-year degree and sit down and not only work with our counselors so they can make sure that they can counsel families and students how they can do that and do so affordably. So one question you might have is we've been here 4 different times asking for long-term sub-waivers for our K-6 program. We think we have a pretty good fit for what we were doing K-6, but we didn't have a 7-12 type model, and that's what we're trying to look at today. The 4 interns that we've asked for in the past are all teachers for us now. Another example of how sometimes we get in the way of ourselves. Thank goodness the department and others have been so gracious to look outside of the box to try to help with the teacher pipeline. But we had a young lady who'd worked for us for almost 5 years in our preschool program. She had 5 children within our school district. All this time that she was going back to school trying to get her teaching degree. She's going to have to leave the job that she has that we're paying her to go an intern for nothing at a nearby school district to come back to us to hopefully teach in our classroom. So the waiver that we received allowed her to be able to not only continue working in our district, but also to be paid a salary where she could continue to afford to go and support her family. So at the K-6 level, some of the things that we had in place were instructional facilitators to support and mentor our interns. At the 7 through 12 grade level in our district, that's something that we don't have at this particular point in time. So we want to design a model that for our interns to be supported by lead teachers or master teachers, similar to an opportunity culture type school. We turned to our partner, Dr. Crosby, at this time, and with the meeting together, they developed a program that also want to make sure that we meet the expectations that they have as a college, meet the expectations that we have as a school district, and to be able to provide the support for our interns that are needed. The plan has a written commitment with multiple layers inside that to support personnel, resources, professional development, and release time as well. Our 7-12 model values the time for interns to observe, co-teach, teach, reflect, and prepare for instruction. The interns will observe under this model 2 class periods per day. and then they will teach 4 periods per day, and then have planning time to go along with that. Also, they will be involved in our grade level and our content area PLCs, and these interns would have to go through a collaborative interview process with our school district, with Lyon College, and personnel from each institution. Lyon College will have the final say-so for those individuals. They know those students, and they know who can handle this and who can't. I don't think it's for every particular intern, but I do think that this would work good for some interns. So our only goal here is to try to put high-quality people in the classroom, cut time to degree for some people, make people want to stay in the teaching profession, and continue to do great things for kids. So that's all that I have at this particular point in time, and we'll answer any questions that you have for us or for these two ladies.
Let me check and see if we have any opposition. We do not. Okay, if you want to close, or if the panel has questions at this point, or do you want to wait till he finishes? Okay, okay, Mrs. McFedridge?
I was just curious, I didn't see it in here, maybe it is, but do you require these interns to come back and work for you? Is there a requirement in there for that to happen?
Yes, for that to happen, they would definitely have to work for us, come back and work for us.
Okay, so it's in your agreement
Yes,
then
ma'am.
with them? Okay, thank you.
Okay, you may close.
You are closed. Thank you so much.
Okay, I have go ahead, Secretary.
Mr. Rich, so Dr. Pfeffer and I have been talking about this model for, I guess, 3 years now. Is that right? Is that how long it's been going?
Just about.
And so we've been encouraging other districts that have come to us and said, hey, what are y'all going to do about the teacher shortage? And we say, well, what are y'all doing about it? You know, go to Southside and look and see what they did. They were very proactive and innovative. And so, Ms. Humphrey, you know how much we've tried to direct people to you. How many districts have actually talked to y'all about replicating or at least tailoring a model similar to this in their own districts with their own local higher ed partners?
In the last school year, we've visited with at least 4 districts.
Identify yourself.
I'm sorry, I'm Novella Humphrey from the Southside School District. In the last school year, I know at least 4, plus within our co-op, we meet as a group often, the instructional leaders, and so we've talked about it within that group. So those 15, 16 school districts within our immediate educational co-op area, and then we had visits from, or phone calls from 3 to 4 districts in the last school year. In the prior school year, we had at least 3 schools. And then we've had a couple of higher education institutions join our joint meetings at UACCB and Lyon College just to observe and see how we talk and interact and problem solve together.
Okay, good, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Newton?
I have a couple of questions, Mr. Reach. First of all, I want to thank you because you recognize what I think Mr. Key is getting at, that you said that we've been helping everyone else. It was time for us to help ourselves. And I think that's what a lot of districts around the state need to start looking at. A couple of questions. This is going to be for secondary, correct? 712?
712, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so you talked about that the intern would have a planning time. Is that going to be a common planning time with the mentor?
Our plan is to assign them to a master teacher and have that common planning time.
Have a common planning time. Okay, good. And then how many interns are you looking at trying to do in a year?
I don't think there needs to be very many. At one time, we had 2 prior, and in our K-6 program, 1 to 2 possibly at the most each year.
Okay. And then have you talked to parents and teachers about the possibilities of starting this at the secondary level?
We have talked with a group of teachers this week. We have not reached out to our parents at this particular point in time, but we will make sure that we do so.
Okay. What has been the reception in the past from your community at the elementary level for what you've done?
They were extremely pleased, and of course these are our own. We're tracking our own kids. We track every child that leaves us, and we've really been honing in on those who have an interest in education. We're going to follow them over the next 3 or 4 years and see exactly what they're doing because we want someone that's invested, wants to be in that area, wants to be in that school, knows our culture, knows what we're about, and what makes us a little different. They have to have that servant's heart that we're looking for, and it's hard to teach that sometimes.
Yes, that's correct. I think that's all I've got.
Okay. Anyone else on this side? Ms. Chambers?
My question is similar to Ms. Newton's in terms of the existing tenured teachers. So they feel good about this. With gift comes responsibility, especially if we're going to replicate this. I do think it'll be really helpful what you learn about engaging your more tenured teachers. You used the word retention earlier, and this has the opportunity to create a bigger, stronger base that the ladder is even stronger from as you develop your more experienced teachers. And so I'm hopeful that you'll be able to capture what's working well and what's not, so that as others come into this space, we can accelerate the benefit of what you're doing. But I love the innovation.
Thank you.
Thanks. It'll be fun to see how these teachers do as they come back into the program as full-time professional teachers.
Awesome. Thank you.
Ms. McEdridge? Mr. Williamson? Dr. Moore? Okay, I have a couple of questions. Working with secondary students and close to their same age, what kind of help and training will you be giving them with regard to classroom management and that narrative? She knows what I'm asking.
As we have grown over the last few years, we instituted a new teacher academy. This will be our third summer of doing that. We spend about 4 days of intensive time with just novice teachers or new to our district, but novice teachers especially. And we go through classroom management, we go through assessment procedures, we go through cultural expectations, and also many things about being 22 years old and teaching an 18-year-old. And so what's the professional standards that we should uphold and maintain every single day. We go beyond the ethics training that's required, and we have conversations. And actually this year, 2 of our novice teachers that completed the program are going to come back and lead that session. They really gained a lot of information, and as things unfolded through their first year of teaching, they went back to things from that day. And so they just voluntarily emailed this summer and said, hey, can we come lead that day? And we said, absolutely. So they're really taking an active leadership role in that training.
Okay, and you mentioned the receptiveness by the teachers. What about the parents and the students?
In the past at K6, one of the students, the first intern we came and asked for, she had taught for 5 years in our district as a parapro in a preschool classroom. So parents were very receptive to her because the relationship and trust was already built. So with this individual, as we move forward at 712, we want to do the same thing, introduce them to families, give them opportunities to build a relationship at open house and those back to school activities.
Okay, and I noticed based on your ACT Aspire scores, if you look at the same cohort as they progress over 17, 18 to 19, you're making good progress with the cohort until you get to 7th to 10th and 8th to 10th. So just be careful with a novice teacher that you don't lose ground, because y'all are doing a lot of things, but that did sort of jump out at me.
Yes, and then so our structures training and some other phonics trainings begin for junior high teachers in 2 weeks. So with approval today, we'll be able to, if the novice teacher or the intern is teaching literacy, we'll be able to embed them within all of the professional development.
Okay, and I know you're using phonics first with your dyslexic students,
yes.
But I'm a little bit troubled by that only 13 are being intervention, and all the data shows that it's typically a much higher percentage based on student population.
Yes.
So can you help me with that?
For 8 years, we've had a very intensive RTI program at our elementary, and we have worked hand in hand with teachers and parents and literacy specialists at the co-ops. So we often identify early and intervene, and so most of the time that dyslexia has been coming at a later level because we're catching up quicker. We have room to grow, and we had some referrals at the end of school year, so I think we'll see that number grow. Our teachers are instructors, they're in phonics first, they're in RISE training this summer, and then our new dyslexia plan was unveiled to principals last
And
week.
your speech therapist as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All three of them.
All right. Well, thank you.
Yes.
Any more questions? Do I have a motion?
Is this a 5-year waiver?
Yes, it was 3.
3 years.
It's what they, 3 years. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve this waiver request.
We have a motion by Ms. Fettridge, second by Ms. Chambers. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, thank you. Okay, let me look at this just a minute, okay? Would somebody let Mr. Ballard know that we will likely deal with, we'll likely deal with that after lunch, because lunch is here and we've got one more to go, so if you will let him know, or let yourself know. Okay, Ms. McLaughlin.
Thank you. For action item A5C, Western Yale County School District is appearing before the board to request superintendent licensure waivers. Their 90 days will expire on September 28th, and they are requesting for 1 year ending on June 30th, 2020. We do have Tommy Fink, board president, Julie Lane, the curriculum coordinator, and Herschel Cleveland here, and you will wish to swear them all in. Okay. Except for Mr. Cleveland actually is an attorney,
Okay.
so.
Well, we like for attorneys to promise to. If you'll please stand, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. You have 20 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the State Board. I'm Tommy Fink, President of Western Yale County School Board, and we're here to request a waiver or ask for a waiver to hire Mr. Herschel Cleveland as our superintendent for a year. On June the 27th, our past superintendent left us. We was kind of late there, and we didn't know it. We're a real small community. No one on our staff certified to do this. We hope that we can get Mr. Cleveland. He's really well respected in the community. No one in the community since it's got out that we were wanting to do this has had any thing to say negative. The local newspaper ran an article, and in their rambling or in their editor, for the editor, the last of it, he even said that he hoped that he was granted the waiver, he could help us out. And the whole board, when this happened, we were looking, and his name come up, and we wanted to talk to him. And once we talked to him, the whole board was unanimous not to even check with anyone else. We're a 5-member board. It was a 5-0 vote to hire him for a year if we could get board approval. And he's really well respected in the community. And I know we evaluate him, and he evaluates the teachers, the community. He works with the people. He works really well. And he's he doesn't have his certification, and I know that was a problem. But we feel like that he fits our community because, like I say, we're real small. We're hanging out around 350, and we need help, and we feel like that he definitely can help us at this time because, I don't know, it seems like a superintendent needs to be not only a superintendent of school, he has to be in the community. People have to accept him. He has to work well with the community. And Mr. Cleveland, I've not found anyone that he can work with. And we're just hoping that we need some help, and we're hoping that we can get him to help us. Thank you.
Madam Chairperson, and I guess now Secretary Key, and members of the board, we appreciate very much the opportunity to present this petition for waiver.
Okay, and if you'll identify yourself.
And my name is Herschel Cleveland, and I'm the superintendent of Western Yale County, if y'all approve me. And my residence is in Paris, Arkansas, just across the mountain. What I would like to do today is give you some information about Western Yale County School District, and then I would like to tell you a little bit about why I considered this job, and then we'll talk about the technology that Western Yale has. We'll talk about the data reporting system, the cycle reports, and the financial ability and planning. The academics, I'm going to ask Ms. Julie Lane, who is our curriculum coordinator, to come up here in a few minutes and talk about the academics. And then the stakeholder communication, the mentoring, and the evaluation. And Madam Chair, if you'll let me know when I have about 8 minutes left, I'll call Julie up here. I asked her to do it, but I can't continually look around. Western Yale County is located up Highway 10. You head out Cantrell and you keep going, and probably most of you know where it is. Excuse me, because my allergies, but Perryville is one school, the next one is Two Rivers, next one's Danville, and then Western Yale County. It has about 158 square miles of territory, and we have about 350 students. So that means we have a square mile for every 2 1/4 student. So got lots of area to cover, got 4 bus routes, and they carry about 40 per bus route. So it's about 160 transported students. The faculty is all certified. There's 35 of them, approximately 35, and I would be the only non-certified one there. We have classified, about 35 of classified employees. And we have a student population that's predominantly Caucasian, but we do have, the last count was 66 Hispanic, had 15 Asian. We have 8 mixed race, and we have 3 Indians and 4 African Americans. So we do have a diverse school population. Now, the schools that are surrounding us, that people through freedom of choice have asked to go to, are Two Rivers, Danville, Magazine, Boonville, and Dardanelle. So that's basically, and I assume that you could say there's some competition for freedom of choice students among the schools, so we're going to have to compete for them. But all of our facilities meet standards. We're asbestos-free. We have an assessment value in the district of about $32 million. So, you know, we've got good things and some bad things, but we are really anxious to address any issues we have this year. Let me tell you, some of you know me or know a little about me, but I'm a lawyer by trade. I've got a BSBA from U of A and also a JD degree. Most of my life I've been a practicing lawyer, and I thought I was getting away from that, except when I went to Western Yale County. I mean, that's what I did for the first 2 or 3 days, is look up the law on this freedom of choice. But I was also juvenile judge, so I saw a lot of the students come through court and dealt with them as juvenile judge. Also dealt with DHS cases, and a lot of your teachers have to leave school and go testify. Custody cases, they have to go testify. So it's a very interesting thing. I've served on your GT commission back here, and they gave me an award back there years ago. But served on the Higher Education Coordinating Board for several years, and it was experience. What we were trying to do is align the high schools with the college admission to get the courses that had to be taken over in college, try to get that reduced. And I'm not sure how successful that's been. And then I did distance learning. You remember back when we had 13 different entities delivering distance learning, and then the GIS board. It's we have zoned school board membership, so everybody has to run from a zone. So GIS becomes important, and I've learned lately it's important where those school district lines are. So we deal with those. But I have, in addition to that, I've been in the military, done basic officer school, advanced officer school, and I got half of the command and general staff school done. And I also have a certificate from Purdue that I did pension and profit sharing from Purdue. Now, the thing that has really helped me is being a delegate when I was in the legislature. I've been in the legislature for 6 years, served on the education committee all 6 years, and sort of headed out the preschool effort to, when I was in the legislature, we had $10 million to preschool. It was cut to 2. We passed the beer tax, got it up to 12. And then when we were doing adequacy, then we stepped it up to 100 million. But I've noted since I've been at West Yale that we're still charging people to come to preschool. So, but I've done that. I've done leadership training over a 2-year period with the Cooperative Extension Program, and I've done committee work with NCSL, which is the National Conference on State Legislators. I've done the governing board of the Southern Regional Education, Southern Regional Board Committee, but the SREB, which is located in Atlanta, some of y'all may be delegates from Arkansas. I hope you are, because this is the most fascinating group, and I learn more there than I have anywhere. And they are actually working on the science of teaching. And I was hoping they would have a magic bullet someplace, but they don't. You get this packet and say, we're going to show you how to improve your schools. And when you get down to it, it's the relationship of the teacher to the student, the competency of the teacher, and the support that the teacher gets. I mean, that's, but anyway, one thing that you might find amusing, I was one of 2 attorneys that first taught continuing legal education in China, in the Guangdong province. China hadn't had attorneys very long, but we went over there, and I had to do a lesson plan for the Communist Party over there and submit it before they'd let me come. But there's 80 million people there, and that was fun. I have filled in for my wife at Arkansas Tech, which I enjoyed immensely. And I have appeared at lots of schools lots of times. I coached a moot court team for Paris, and we did fairly well. We had a competition in Fort Smith, and
you have 8 minutes.
How many?
8
left?
Yes.
I better hurry. Okay. Let me get on to our technology. I'm going to rush on through this. We have fiber to both of our campuses. We got a campus at Belleville and a campus at Havana. We've got fiber to that. We've got laptops for every kid. And we are in good shape technology-wise. The data reporting cycle reports, we have 13 people who will submit those. If y'all approve me, they'll submit them to me, and I'm going to know what's in there before I sign off. We've got the financial planning. We've got a budget of about $3 million. $3,293,000, and we've got $594,000 in unexpended, unrestricted funds, and we've got about $600,000 in the building fund. So we're okay. I would go into the budget farther if I had more time, but I think that tells you that we're really kind of okay for right now. But we are losing children, and our grades, we got a grade D in elementary. We got a grade C in high school. And I'm going to ask Julie to come up here and spend a couple of minutes telling you what we're doing to improve that. We've been working, I've been working with the high school principal and the elementary principal and the curriculum coordinator to try to correct some of these problems. Julie? By the way, she's from Coal Hill originally.
Hi, I'm Julie Lane. I'm the curriculum coordinator. I want to speak to the academics. As you know, we have a D and a C. The elementary will possibly qualify for level 3 support and reading in the 1920 school year.
Excuse me for interrupting. Will you pull your mic down closer to your mouth?
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Prior to this, we have been working to improve reading scores. The K2 teachers are trained in RISE. They were trained the 18-19 school year and work closely with Tanya Newton from Arch Ford. This summer, the grades 3-6 will be attending RISE, and K2 teachers are attending Phonics First training. We are hopeful for the improved reading scores through the RISE and the Phonics First program. We're also working on training the K6 staff in sound walls and incorporating the sound walls in the elementary buildings. We feel involving everyone is a process that will help increase reading scores. During the 18-19 school year, I worked with the elementary principal and K6 teachers on rewriting the written curriculum and ensuring standards were vertically and horizontally aligned. During the 2019-20 school year, the K6 teachers will continue to fine-tuning their written curriculum. Also, during this school year, the administration will be working with 7-12 students on rewriting their written curriculum, as well as ensuring it is aligned. Last year, I started looking over the dyslexia intervention program. We are using Barton. We served 46 students, K-12, during the 18-19 school year, and we're working closely with the teachers to identify students early for this program. We know that early is the key, and the teachers have to have that knowledge. Since July 1st, when Mr. Cleveland was hired pending ADE board approval, we've met several times to discuss the elementary and have started developing plans. We met Tuesday with an unpaid consultant, Leona Cleveland, to ensure our plan for the elementary was appropriate. She determined the plan was appropriate. We feel the focus on the elementary will pay dividends to the high school test scores. The superintendent, principal, and myself will spend more time in the classrooms to ensure teaching and learning and time on task. I believe if given the chance, Mr. Cleveland will help our school improve academically and will be focused on teaching and learning as well as the finances. Thank you.
Anything?
Herschel Cleveland again. And we are developing a team approach to things. I don't think that any one person can get done in a school what needs to be done. It takes effort from everybody, and including the community. And I was told yesterday that one of the churches in the district is giving all the children their initial school supplies. I just couldn't believe that, but that is, I mean, that's an indication that the community supports you. That doesn't mean there's not people that get upset and want to transfer their kid out of there. The mentoring, I heard a little bit about mentoring this morning, but even though I have a little age on me, I don't have superintendent experience, and I know that. and I would be glad to go through the mentoring program and have a mentor if I'm approved for this job. And the evaluation, the board will get me. I've been trying to get a hold of Richard Abernathy because it's my understanding he has an evaluation tool for evaluating superintendents. And in talking with Mr. Fink, I'm sure they'll want to evaluate me. They have offered only a one-year contract, which is what we would like. I mean, we would like to grow somebody that'll stay in that community, grow with that school, and do everything that needs to be done. I found out through the years, because I was married, I am married to a former superintendent of Western Yale County. And one of the reasons I agreed to do this is she told me how good the people were, plus I grew up not far from there and know some of them. And then my son wants me to do this because he wants to be able to tell me, me to ask him questions about what I should do. And that's been reversed. But I told the school board the night they tentatively hired me that there would be scrutiny on them. This is an unusual move that we're asking for, and we can't afford to fail. You know, if we fail the community and we fail the kids. Now, I'm going to tell y'all the same thing. If y'all grant this waiver and let me be superintendent for a while, then I will owe you the same responsibility as I owe the school board, that we can't afford to fail. And I'm prepared to make it a life, not a job, for the next year. So I appreciate you again, and I'm sure my time is about up, so I'll sit down. Thank y'all.
Okay. Do we have any opposition? No, thank you. Was that your summation, or do you want to?
I have learned not to summarize when people are getting ready to go to lunch.
Good point. Let's start over here. Dr. Moore, do you have any questions at this point? Mr. Williamson? Ms. McFetridge?
I think I'm okay right now.
Okay. Ms. Dean? Ms. Chambers?
Just a question, this may go to the board. You sound, Mr. Cleveland, very credentialed and very respected, and what a great place to start. And that, coupled with the mentoring, sounds like it would position you very effectively for this year. I don't think any community can afford to just hold their own, to tread water on any given year. So that's a difficult position to put an interim in, where you're wanting to position for what comes next and not lose any ground as you're bridging from now to the future. Do you have any thoughts on that, or how you might work with your board and your teachers to make progress this next year as you prepare for the future superintendent?
If you get a one-year contract and the people know you're going to be there for 1 year, they know you're a short timer, so what they don't like about you, they can say, I can wait you out. And they do that. And I've seen that happen before. But what I'm going to try to do is give enough of me to the district by going to the events, attending the ball games, and communicating with the people. And I've asked the principals already to document the teachers. If they don't do right, if there are problems, document them. Because when you really get mad at them at the end of the year, you don't have them documented, it doesn't do any good. Because that's one thing I've done. I've represented school districts and dismissal actions, and I've represented teachers asking not to be dismissed. So, you know, I've been all around the school, but I've never been in it. But I would hope, I mean, they were on, I don't think we have physical distress, but they were on physical stress a few years ago when my wife went over there. And so they know that they have to do well. And with this D in elementary, we have worked every day on to put the right people in the right positions and make sure the frameworks are aligned to what's going to be tested. And then we've got to work on time on task with the teachers. If you get a D, you've got somebody not working every day from bell to bell. So we've got to, and we've kind of got a system now, is the principal in the elementary is also the basketball coach. So Ms. Julie back here, whom I have grown to love in 2 weeks, is going to go down there some when he's gone, and I'm going to go down there to make sure they're doing what they need to be doing. But I tell you, I mean, people, if you get lax on them, they'll get lax on you. And they've got to know that you're looking at them. They're professionals. And I would never treat a teacher any way but a professional. And I expect professionalism out of them. They're certified, so they're supposed to know their subject matter. They're supposed to know their teaching techniques. They're supposed to know how to make school good. But you don't get D's if you have school that's good. So they'll get tired of hearing that.
Dr. Hill?
Is that?
Ms. Newton?
Good morning. You mentioned that you would be willing to take a mentor or have a mentor help you through this next year. What about the training that a superintendent goes through each year? Are you going to do those professional development trainings that are specifically for?
If y'all approve me today, if you approve this waiver, I've got to go over to AEA to a new superintendent's training this afternoon that started this morning, and I'll go tomorrow. And anywhere that I can get knowledge, you know, not being a certified superintendent, I don't know what I don't know. Mm-hmm. But if I go to the trainings, then along with this other knowledge, I feel like I've got an advantage over a lot of people through all of these. I mean, that SREB and you being in the legislature, the secretary knows how much information. The information is the best Arkansas has to offer in those legislative sessions.
So you are going to go through the trainings?
I'm planning on it.
Okay.
I mean, if there's something comes up at school I have to handle, then I might skip one, but otherwise, I'll be at the trainings.
I guess, and this might be for legal, these trainings are required for superintendents in Arkansas. Would they be required for him?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Mary Claire Hyatt from Legal. So, yes, I think the concern I have is that if you look at the waiver request, it does ask for a waiver of the superintendent mentoring program, both the law and the rules. So I think we need to clarify if the mentoring is that superintendent mentoring program that's set up in law, which then would negate the need for that waiver. Not all of the waivers, but just the two that are about the superintendent mentoring, or if it's a different type of mentoring program. I think we need to clarify that so we can make sure we're getting them what they need.
I definitely think that he would need the mentoring, and I would also like to make sure that we go through the required superintendent trainings for the year. So is that something that y'all would be agreeable to?
I would think so. I mean, I think a mentor is good for everybody. And, I know a lot of these superintendents, you know, and so I mean, I don't really know how much time that would take, but as long as it doesn't detract from me actually getting things done at the school.
Well, it's required, so I think that it would be worth your time.
Well, if it's required, we'll do it.
Okay.
I mean, The effort that Arkansans are giving to education is excellent right now. The effort is good. I'm not sure we're getting the results that we deserve to get, you know, because I want us to get better and better and better. And sometimes we go forward and slip back a little bit, but I think you're exactly right.
Is the superintendent, I know this is a small district, is the superintendent the only district level administrator besides the curriculum coordinator? Yes, okay. All
Okay.
right. And then the secretary bookkeeper at your district, how long have they been there?
I believe 4 years. The e-finance director happens to be one of my classmates' daughters. That was one of my best friends until she passed away. So I've known her since she was a little baby.
Is it the same person?
The secretary is a different person than the bookkeeper.
How long has she been there?
I would guess 3 years. 3 years.
Can you come to the microphone?
Julie Lane. She had been a high school secretary, and then she's a nurse, so she went off, and then she came back for the district secretary position about 3 years ago.
Both of those positions are full-time?
Yes.
And so they've been in the office with the former superintendent that whole time?
Yes.
Okay. My other question is for your board president.
Yes.
When did your former superintendent leave?
When
did your former superintendent leave?
I'm sorry.
When did your former superintendent leave?
He left July 27th, Thursday, and he's
So
been
just
there
last
about 4 years.
Okay.
We didn't have any indication he was leaving or even looking
Okay.
for anyone.
Okay, so just recently. And then are your plans to do a superintendent search during this school year?
Yeah, we were wanting to get him for a year, you know, hire him for a year if we can, see how it's going, and see. It's hard to jump into it in a small school because you don't get I don't mean anyone's a bad applicant, but you don't get all the best ones because they're wanting more money than we can pay and they're better facilities or whatever. And he's offered to help, and so he's there. And now I'm not going to say that if it goes well this year, and if we could get an extension, maybe we want to do that, you know, if we can't find someone this year. But yes, we will. He will help us try to find someone this year.
But you are planning on searching
Yeah.
this year? Okay. All right. And
Ms. Hyde?
have you,
Sorry.
one more question, sorry. I forgot the board president's name. Have you talked to the people in your community?
Yes. We have actually, two towns, Belleville and Havana, is complying to Western Yell County. They're 4 miles apart. Elementary's in Belleville, the high school's in Havana. And the name has come up, and everyone says it's a good choice if we can get him. No one, I have not had one person since this started that said, oh, you don't need him. He's well thought of. He won't have any problem. We won't have a problem. I think, oh, you shouldn't have hired him or you should have hired someone else, because there's no one else that right now. We had one, turned us down 4 or 5 years ago, was interested again when this came open, and the very same thing happened. We contacted him, interested, and then all of a sudden, no, I'm not interested. So we feel like this is a way to go to keep stability in the community.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Ms. McFedridge?
Yes. Is Mr. Cleveland finished practicing law at this point then? Will this be his focus 100%?
I'm hard here, and I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Will Mr. Cleveland continue to practice law, or will this be his full-time job? That'd be great. Thank you.
I basically tried to reduce the law practice when I went to work for DIS. And I was the deputy director over at DIS for several years and worked with the Department of Ed. I was the E-rate coordinator and everything, because I could not reduce my caseload. So I got somebody else to come in and do the caseload. And when I retired from DIS, I went back home. I never opened the office back up. But I had a partner that he and I have been working together for 44 years. And he was a longtime smoker and got bedridden. But he didn't want to give up the law practice. So what I did for him is he practiced from that phone. And I would go run wherever he needed to go, take care of his cases. And he died back in February. And I occasionally do deeds or trust or something for people who are longtime clients or something like that. But I do not. I've got one case set for the end of August, and all the rest of any court cases. I've tried not to take a court case ever since I retired that would put me at court on a certain date, because in these 4 years I've been retired, I've done some extensive traveling, and it suits me to totally not do. I mean, I wouldn't. I'm ready. I've done that for 48 years, so I'm ready not to have to do any law practice. But it looks like I'm going to at the school if y'all give me that waiver.
Okay.
But no, I plan on doing no law practice.
Okay.
I'll have to get rid of that one case.
Right, I understand. Okay. And then I have a question. Is it Miss Julie? I didn't hear you speak about
Ms.
profession.
McFetrich, excuse me, would you straighten your microphone? I think you're cutting yourself off.
I can't ever get this. Okay. You hadn't
Thank
really
you.
mentioned professional learning communities.
Okay.
Can you tell us where the district is at with that?
Yes, on the professional learning communities, the elementary is full implemented. We, yes, sorry. We meet weekly, and actually the third grade teacher has to meet 3 times a week with people, and she's the pivot point at our school to get that going. So that, because we have 1 third grade teacher, so she meets with 4th, 5th, and 6th because we have a departmentalized group. And then she'll meet with 2nd to make sure everything's aligned, make sure it's so everybody knows what's going on. And right now we're in the alignment process.
So has everyone been trained in the
Yes.
district?
Yes. High school will start, they've been trained and they're going to start their PLCs this year. In a small district, it was hard to find time, and we're still trying to just find the time to get their PLC set up. So, thank you.
Anyone else? I think all of my questions were covered. I think one of my concerns, based on your history, is not your history, but the district's history, is that you have people around you with regard to supportive with public school finance, because it's, as you well know from your service, it's a whole different ballgame than just about anything else. And my other question would be, I don't know if it's Ms. Hyatt or Ms. Kaufman, if they get this waiver, will they be cited for not meeting a standard because their superintendent is on waiver? No, they would not. Okay. Ms. Hyatt?
May I respond to what you just said?
Absolutely.
And I think, and I wanted to make sure Ms. Newton heard this too, the financial tier 1 training that's required for financial officers, he would still be required to do, which would go over all of the financial components. And so I know there was a training and a finance kind of concern, so I wanted to make sure you had that.
I was in the legislature, Herschel Cleveland again, I forget to do that.
That's okay.
I was in the legislature during the adequacy. In fact, I was Speaker of the House during the adequacy issue. I attended every adequacy meeting that they had. I met with Ogden and Picus, and the Department of Ed and the governor's office did not give us a funding bill. So Olin Cook, me, Red Milligan, Paul Weaver, Jody Mahoney, and I think there was somebody else. We wrote the funding formula for the schools based upon the reports of Ogden and Picus. And what we did was a building-to-building funding formula. See, we did exactly what they said. The bill passed, we got it through the House, over to the Senate, and the Senate changed it, so they used all of our figures and all of our work and made the funding formula a money per child, which meant that the larger districts who are more economically efficient would receive more money and the smaller districts less. And so, you know, I was involved in the initial, I think I can do school finance. I was the assistant budget director for the House, and my main fellow got hurt. You remember when the budget fella couldn't do his work. So after a week in the legislature, I did the budget for my second year in there, and there's a few, 8 or 9 people that do the budget. So I did this. I was one of those 8 or 9 people for 4 years that did the state budget. So, and I say this, I'll probably mess the budget up, but I think I can do that. But a refresher course will be just exactly what I need.
Thank you. Any other questions? Do I have a motion?
I have a question, please.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
No. I'd like to make a motion, but just wanted to be clear on what the waiver, what the request is specifically targeted from a waiver perspective.
I'm glad you asked that question because my question was going to be similar. So I'm still confused as to whether they're going to continue moving forward with the request for the superintendent mentoring rules and law, which is in the request as it's written. So that's one component of the waiver request, and the other is superintendent licensure, which they have the law and the standard for that as well. So there's kind of 2 components, the superintendent licensure and then the superintendent mentoring program that are part of the waiver request. And it would be really helpful for me if they could clarify whether they intend to move forward with the superintendent mentoring component. And if they are, then maybe to clarify what they meant by mentoring program.
Herschel Cleveland, I've been informed that we don't even need the waiver for the mentoring program. Since I'm going to do that anyway, I think we're good.
So I believe that would just make the request just for superintendent licensure, so it would have the standard and the law required for superintendent licensure. Am I missing anything, Kelly?
Would we need to make the stipulation that he undergoes the training for superintendents?
So I believe all that training is going to be required as he'll be the superintendent.
So we don't have to.
And they didn't request a waiver of any of that training, just of the licensure component.
Okay, so I'll put that in motion.
No, Madam Chair, I don't think we need to add that to the motion. I mean, I think we work with AAEA setting that up. Mr. Cleveland, I think he said that he's going to go through the training as soon as we get him out of here today. So I don't see the need. From my perspective, I think the only thing I was concerned about was the licensure, and if we eliminate the mentoring under the code 617-427 and the rules, I think what they need is reflected in 613-109, a waiver from that, and standard 4-B.2 of the standards.
So I would like to move that. What the secretary just
Ms. Donovan, did you get that? Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved by Ms. Chambers, second by Ms. McFettridge and Ms. Dean. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay, go forth and superintend.
Madam
I do.
Chair, I was going to mention, because I think in his introduction and description of his background, he did not initially mention the fact that he was speaker during the time of following the Lakeview decision. I'm glad he got around to that, because I was going to have to tell that on him if he didn't. So I'm confident that the department will be there to help them. I had asked Ms. Kaufman to make sure that she was prepared to answer any questions from a standpoint of support, and she contacted the Western Yale team in the last couple of days and really got down to a lot of the issues that might have been of concern. So I feel comfortable with this and appreciate y'all taking this vote.
Okay. And as stated, you had a worthy goal, and I think you have the support behind you to meet that goal, because your numbers are not what you or we want them to be. Okay, you're excused.
Thank you very much.
Do you have a motion to recess until after lunch? Ms. Dean, Ms. Chambers, we will come back at 1:30. call the afternoon session of the State Board of Education to order. And our first order of business is the charter contract agreement, and it looks like we have a duo going to present, Ms. Hyatt and Mr. Ballard. Dynamic duo, as Ms. Dean says.
Thank you, Ms. Our new chair. So I put a new copy of the charter agreement in all of your, well, not in your chairs, but on top of your piles of things. The version that got uploaded to the agenda still had some of our mark-throughs from when we met with some stakeholders to kind of work out some components of the agreement. So I'm glad you got to see that, because you can see some of the changes we made when we met with the stakeholders. But the version that's in your, was on top of your stuff is the final version. So just a little bit of background. We've used a formal charter contract in the past, but the last year or so, we've really moved away from using a formal charter contract, and we had been using the application mixed with the minutes and the transcripts of their hearings, the videos from their hearings, and then any amendment requests as all together being the charter contract, which, as you can imagine, gets a little bit complicated when you're trying to find a particular provision. And we also get a lot of requests to view the charter contract of particular charters, which is hard to give people that information when it's not in a succinct place. So we're going to move back to having a charter contract, the one that you have in front of you. So we drafted it. We did meet with some stakeholders and make some revisions, presented it to the charter panel in June. They approved it. And I think the goal is that anyone who doesn't have an active charter contract, anyone who is granted a new charter contract in August, okay, or anyone who then goes through the renewal process will move to this contract, but we're not going to make people who have a signed charter contract then switch to this one. So it's not going to be retroactive or change anyone's currently existing charter contract. And I think the idea is that then once these are signed, we'll start putting them on the website, on the charter school website, for transparency so everyone can see. And we've also added, well, the whole thing is new, but one thing that I want to point out is that the Appendix C is just for amendments to the charter. So all of the amendment requests that are through the year will be added in one place so that people can see them. And do you have anything? Okay, if you have any questions, happy to.
So since this was in-house sort of administrative, did we get stakeholder or input, like we usually call them, public comment? Did you get that?
So we didn't do, this is, since it's not a rule that has to be promulgated, we didn't do a formal public comment hearing, but we did meet with some stakeholders. We met with APSRC. We did talk to some charter schools and get some feedback, as well as look at previous versions of the charter contract that we'd used in the past.
Do you have any questions? Dr. Moore?
Are there any big differences between previous versions of the contract to this?
So I think this one is much more comprehensive than ones we've used in the past, and there have been multiple versions in the past, but everything that's in this contract can either be found in law or rule or as something that the charter panel has the authority to do. So I don't know that it's ever been in one place so comprehensively, which is why this is longer than the previous contracts. But we really wanted to put all of the expectations in one place because it's really hard, I think, even for existing charters to know all of the expectations that are in 5,000 pages of a code book and hundreds of rules, so.
Thank you, that's great. That's great to have that all in one document now.
Anyone else? Do I have a motion? Dr. Moore moved and Ms. Newton seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Thank you.
Now, I have good news with regard to action item B on the school choice applications. All 4 of those have been resolved to the benefit of the students. They will all get to make the transfers that they had chosen. And so that skips us right down to item 2, which is the consideration for release for public comment ADE rules governing the school worker defense program. Mr. Dugan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Board. What you have in front of you are the school worker defense rules. I had spoken with Ms. Elisa Moore, who has retired now, but she was the one who administered this program, and what she was getting was a lot of attorneys that were not providing backup documentation and also putting their meals and things of that sort and wanting to be reimbursed for that. So she asked if we could add a definition for cost, and so this is the definition that we came up with to put here in the rules, and also to require that anything that they would like to be reimbursed for, that they provide backup documentation of that. Also, what has been included in these rules is Act 557 of 2019, which states that if you provide corporal punishment to a student that is disabled, non-ambulatory, that you will not be covered under this program. You will not get the benefit of this program. And so I'd ask that this board approve these rules so I can release them for public comment. And with that, if there's any questions, that's all I have.
Do we have any questions? There being none, do I have a motion?
Second.
Moved by Ms. McFetridge, seconded by Ms. Dean. All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you very much.
May I step aside?
You may.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any new business to come before the panel? Seeing none, do we have any public comment? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Move to adjourn.
Moved by Mr. Williams, second by Ms. Dean. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, so we will see you tonight at dinner. And then we will have 3 more school choice applications that would come before us tomorrow morning.